February 20th, 1945. Northern Iwo Jima, a cold wind sweeps across the jagged volcanic rubble as Marine Private First Class Daniel Rohr presses his chest into the black sand, the ground shaking under the concussion of naval gunfire. The air tastes like sulfur and gunpowder. Above him, the silhouette of Mount Suribachi looms, a fortress of tunnels, pillboxes, and hidden firing ports carved deep into its bones. The burst of Nambu machine gun fire zips overhead, trimming the edge of a shattered driftwood log. Rourke flinches, shoving his helmet tighter onto his head. To his right, Corporal Matthew Red Lasker checks the straps of a cylindrical steel tank welded to a canvas harness. The M2-2 Flamethrower, 70 pounds of fuel, nitrogen pressure cylinders, and raw, slow-moving terror. "Red, you good?" Rourke shouts over the rising howl of artillery. Lasker spits grit from his mouth. "Yeah, just wish this thing didn't make me feel like I'm wearing a damn lighthouse." A mortar whines overhead and slams into the slope above them. Sand rains down like black snow. Ahead, a squad of Marines is pinned behind a jagged outcropping. The Japanese defenders, veterans from the 109th Division, have allowed the Americans ashore, only to erupt the battlefield into crisscrossing arcs of fire. They had spent months carving caves into Suribachi's flanks. Inside those caves, they laughed at American weapons they considered clumsy, heavy, too new to be decisive. Especially the flamethrower to them, it was primitive, dangerous to its operator, fuel-hungry, limited in range. Officers joked that any American foolish enough to carry one simply volunteered to be shot first. But that was before they saw what it could do inside stone corridors. Rourke lifts his head. Through the smoke, Lieutenant Warren Evans gestures sharply, forward. The platoon is bogged down. A hidden machine gun nest is pinning 2 entire companies to the sand. The only way to reach it is to burn it out. Red slaps the ignition switch on the M2-2 wand, testing the spark at a faint click. Then another. "Let's hope it holds," he mutters. Rourke adjusts his grip on his M1 rifle, swallowing a dry knot in his throat. "You sure about this?" "No," Red says. "But that cave sure as hell isn't backing down." Evans waves again. The squad prepares to rush. Behind them, a Sherman tank belches exhaust as its flamethrower-modified auxiliary unit, the pilot of U.S. H-1, fires a test burst. A gout of flame rolls across the sand like a living torch, reflecting in the Marine's eyes. Rourke feels the heat from 50 yards away. The Japanese machine gun nest falls silent for a moment, just long enough for Red to whisper, "They aren't laughing now." The word is given. The squad breaks from cover. Rourke sprints, heart hammering, boots sinking deep into the volcanic ash. Tracers streak around them in red-orange arcs. A rifleman to his left stumbles, hit. Another drops prone, crawling toward a shallow depression in the sand. Red charges ahead, the heavy tanks clanking against his back, flame wand tucked under his arm like a fireman's hose. The Japanese gunners unleash another belt, bullets kicking up sand around his feet. Rourke fires a burst uphill, anything to keep heads down, as Red reaches the lip of the cave. He crouches, flips the safety, and angles the nozzle toward the darkness. For half a second, nothing moves. The cave is silent, too silent. Then, a muzzle flashed and a bullet smacks the fuel tank on Red's back at a metallic clang. The tank holds, but Red freezes. Rourke's breath stops. Another flash. Red jerks sideways, barely dodging, and squeezes the trigger. A throat punch roar erupt from the nozzle. A stream of burning fuel, thick, incandescent, rolling like molten copper, floods into the cave mouth. The flame clings to rock and flesh, crawling deeper, sucking out the oxygen. The ground trembles as trapped ammunition inside begins to cook off. For a moment, the world glows orange. Then an explosion kicks dust and fire back out at them. The cave belching smoke like a furnace. Rourke shields his face. When the smoke thins, faint screams echo from within the tunnels. Chaotic, panicked, desperate. A sound no Marine ever forgets. Red exhales, trembling, smoke curling around him. "They thought we were the ones who should be afraid," he says softly. Behind them, The Marines surge forward, using the momentary break in fire to push up the slope. The flamethrower has bought them 30 yards. And on Iwo Jima, 30 yards is life or death. But the battle is only beginning. Dead up the mountain, dozens more caves wait. And deep inside them, Japanese soldiers still believe the flamethrower is just another American novelty. They have not yet seen what happens when the Marines bring it to Okinawa. February 21st, 1945. Western Slope, Mount Suribachi. The morning sun rises distorted through drifting curtains of smoke, turning the sky a dull bronze. The ground is warm beneath the Marines' boots, heated not by sunlight, but by the lingering fires still smoldering inside the caves they cleared the night before. PFC Daniel Rourke wipes soot from his face as he crouches beside a shallow crater. His ears ring from the constant bombardment. Every few seconds, a distant boom rolls across the island, a mixture of naval shells and detonated fuel tanks. Above, fragments of volcanic ash drift like black snowflakes. Red Lasker adjusts the straps of a fresh flamethrower harness. His uniform is charred at the elbows, and his eyebrows are gone, singed clean off from last night's burst. He tries to joke about it, but his hands keep trembling. Lieutenant Evans kneels over a map spread across a spent ammo crate. The map is dotted with red arrows and circled cave icons. Objectives for Company E. Suribachi's honeycombed, he says. Caves here, here, and a big one here. Intelligence thinks this main tunnel links half the southern face. Red whistles softly. How many inside? Evans doesn't look up. Enough to keep us busy. Rourke studies the slope rising ahead. It looks like a mountain, but it's a fortress, one engineered by General Kurabayashi's men with ruthless precision. Each tunnel interlocks with others. Each pillbox covers another. And every dark opening on the hillside hides rifles waiting to fire the moment a Marine silhouette crosses the sand, that a sudden shout crackles over the platoon radio. Enemy movement in Cave 12. They're regrouping. Evans stands. That's us. Saddle up. The Marines move out in staggered formation, rifles ready. The air is thick with sulfur, smoke, and a faint metallic smell of cooling steel. A machine gun stutters somewhere up the slope, answered by a burst from a bar team. As they approach Cave 12, the temperature drops several degrees. A cold draft pours from the mouth of the tunnel, air pulled through the labyrinth beneath the mountain. Rourke shines a flashlight inside. He catches the reflection of eyes. Contact, he shouts, and a grenade bounces from the darkness toward them. Down. The blast rocks the entrance, spraying chunks of volcanic rock. The Marines scatter behind boulders, coughing through dust. Someone screams for a corpsman. Evans dives beside Rourke, brushing debris off his helmet. They're dug in deep, Evans growls. We're not going to rifle our way in. Red steps forward, already lighting the ignition coil on his new M2-2. Rourke grabs his arm. Red, wait. We don't know how many. We don't need to know. Red says, voice low. They shot our boys from that cave. We're shutting it down. He moves like a man approaching the mouth of a beast. The cables on the flamethrower jingle faintly with each step. Japanese rifle fire snaps out of the darkness, sparks dancing across rock inches from his boots. Red crouches, wand angled down. Cover me, he shouts. Rourke and two riflemen unleash suppressing fire, bullets cracking into the cave mouth, forcing the defenders to duck. Red squeezes the trigger. This time the flame leaps with a deep, thunderous roar, longer, hotter, more violent than the burst from yesterday. The stream surges forward, illuminating the cave walls with a hellish glow. Inside, the flame fans outward, clinging to every surface. The screams come almost immediately. But something else happens, something the Marines haven't seen before. A second tunnel. One they didn't know existed. Vents flame straight up through a hidden chimney. Fire erupts from a hole 20 yards above them, like a volcanic geyser. The Marines duck instinctively as the heat washes over them. Evans shields his face. They built chimneys, vent shafts. They're interconnected. Rourke realizes the truth. The flamethrower isn't just burning the soldiers in the first chamber. It's sucking oxygen from deeper corridors, creating a firestorm that's racing through the tunnel network like a living thing. Inside the mountain, the Japanese defenders finally understand the weapon they mocked. They begin to panic. Rourke hears shouting, frantic voices in Japanese, echoing through the vents. The soldiers inside scramble toward escape tunnels, desperate to outrun the heat. One emerges from a secondary opening higher on the slope, uniform smoldering, stumbling blindly into Marine rifle fire. Red finally releases the trigger, panting hard, sweat dripping down his neck. The fuel tank hisses as it cools. Jesus, Rourke mutters. How many were in there? Evans scans the smoking opening. Enough to keep us from taking this hill by nightfall. A distant whistle signals incoming mortar fire. Get down. The Marines drop as explosions rip across the ridge. Shrapnel clatters against stone. Someone yells for a stretcher. When the bombardment passes, the platoon regroups. Cave 12 is silent now. Silent in a way no cave should ever be. The entrance glows orange, like the mouth of a forge. Red sinks onto a piece of broken concrete, shoulders shaking. They laughed at this thing, he whispers, patting the flamethrower. They thought we were carrying toys. Rourke kneels beside him. They're not laughing anymore. But the lieutenant is staring uphill toward a dark opening partially hidden by jagged stone. A massive cave, far larger than any they've encountered. Men, Evans says. That's the main one. And command wants it cleared. Rourke follows his gaze and feels a cold, knot form in his gut. If the smaller caves were lethal, that one will be a nightmare. February 22nd, 1945. Lower approaches to Suribachi's main tunnel. The morning begins with a stillness that feels wrong. Unnatural, heavy, as if the mountain itself is holding its breath. The Marines advance slowly, rifles raised, stepping over burnt debris and collapsed rock. The cratered landscape glows faintly in the dawn light, dotted with wisps of smoke rising from the caves they sealed the previous day. Rourke wipes grime from his eyes, trying to blink away the exhaustion. No one slept more than an hour. Every few minutes, the ground shuddered from explosions deep within the tunnels as trapped fuel burned and munitions detonated. Some Marines swore they heard screams between the blasts. Others refused to listen. Red Lasker walks beside him, a new M2-2 flamethrower strapped heavily to his back. He's already lost 2 to shrapnel and rupture tanks. His hands tremble as he adjusts the nozzle. Rourke notices but doesn't comment. Ahead, Lieutenant Evans signals for the platoon to halt. They gather in a semicircle around him as he kneels behind a boulder and gestures toward a jagged opening 50 yards upslope. That's it, Evans says quietly. The main tunnel. Intelligence says it stretches nearly a quarter mile through the mountain. Multiple chambers. Ammo storage. Barracks. Maybe even a command post. Red whistles under his breath. All in one place. Kurabayashi built this island to bleed us dry. Evans replies. This is the heart. A gust of cold air flows from the tunnel mouth, carrying with it the faint stink of decay, damp earth, and spent gunpowder. Rourke feels it brush against his face like the breath of something alive. A bar gunner, Lance Corporal Santoro, peers through his sights. Movement inside. Maybe 6, no more. Hard to tell. Evans nods. They're waiting. They want us to come to them. A thunderous boom echoes from deep inside, followed by a rumbling vibration beneath their boots. The Marines exchange uneasy glances. Cave-ins? Rourke asks. Could be, Evans says. Or they're repositioning. Santoro lowers his weapon. Sir, with respect, charging that thing straight on is suicide. Evans agrees, but he also has orders, and those orders are clear. Clear the tunnel before sundown. He looks at Red. You ready? Red doesn't answer. Instead, he flips the ignition switch once, twice, listening for the click. Ready as I'll ever be. Rourke checks his M1 rifle. I'm going with him. Evans nods. You 2 take point. The rest follow behind in waves. Engineers will dynamite side tunnels. Keep pressure on them, but don't get trapped. A faint sound drifts from the darkness of the tunnel. At first, Rourke thinks it's the wind. Then he realizes it's voices. Dozens of them. Japanese soldiers chanting, low and rhythmic. A battle-bound prayer. Red shivers. They're gearing up. Evans raises his hand. Move. The Marines advance in tightening formation, boots sinking into shifting volcanic ash. The mouth of the main tunnel looms larger with each step, its carved stone edges blackened by soot. The air grows colder. Rourke shines his flashlight along the rocks. Carvings, Japanese kanji, are etched into the stone. Some are prayers for victory. Others are the names of the men who built these tunnels with their own hands. A rifle shot cracks from inside. Cover. Evans shouts. Bullets ricochet off the rocks in a shower of sparks. A Marine goes down, hit in the shoulder. Another drags him behind a boulder while corpsmen rush in. Red crouches low, gripping the flamethrower wand. They know we're coming. Rourke fires into the darkness, seeing nothing but a flash of muzzle fire before it vanishes again. They're dug in deep. Evans motions frantically. Press forward. Smoke grenades. 2 Marines pull the pins and hurl smoke into the entrance. Thick white plumes spill into the cavern, rolling across the ground. Evans signals Red. Do it. Red sprints through the haze, Rourke at his side. The smoke makes it impossible to see more than a few feet. Every sound is amplified by the cave. Bootsteps echo like drum beats. Distant shouts bounce off the walls in confusing directions. 10 yards in, Red stops, pivots toward the source of the chatter, and squeezes the trigger that a flood of flame erupts from the nozzle, illuminating the chamber in a sudden infernal glow. Rourke glimpses Japanese soldiers scrambling behind sandbags, their eyes widening in horror as the fire surges toward them. The flamethrower roars like a jet engine. Fuel splashes onto sandbags, wooden supports, uniforms. Everything. Screams fill the cave. Red pushes forward, sweeping the flame left to right, forcing defenders deeper into the tunnel. The heat becomes unbearable. Rourke shields his face, firing between bursts at shapes darting through the smoke. Suddenly, a Japanese soldier charges from a side passage, bayonet fixed, aiming straight for Red. Red left. Red turns too slowly. Rourke fires once, twice. The attacker collapses, sliding to a stop at Red's feet. Red stands frozen, chest heaving. Rourke grabs his shoulder. Stay with me. We're not done. More gunfire flashes from deeper inside. The tunnel bends sharply to the right, disappearing into blackness. Behind them, the second wave of Marines surges forward, carrying satchel charges and demolition packs. Engineers prepare to seal offside tunnels methodically. Evans's voice echoes through the smoke. Push. They're falling back. Now's our chance. For the first time, Rourke hears panic in the defenders' voices. The Japanese soldiers who once mocked the flamethrower are now shouting warnings. Carry you. Carry you. Fire dragon. Red raises the wand again. They're scared, he says, his voice is grim. And they should be. Rourke steps forward into the darkness, knowing they are only at the entrance of a massive underground labyrinth, and the real fight lies deeper inside. February 22nd, 1945. Deep inside Suribachi's tunnel network, the darkness ahead swallows the light. Rourke feels it before he sees it, an oppressive, suffocating weight that settles on his shoulders the deeper they move. The air is hot, stale, and thick with the smell of burning wood, scorched cloth, and fuel vapors that Red's flamethrower tank sloshes softly with each step, the liquid inside shifting like something alive. Behind them, the rest of the platoon files in, boots crunching on hardened volcanic grit. Every sound echoes as if the mountain itself were listening. Evans holds up a clenched fist. Stop! The Marines freeze. Ahead, the tunnel splits 3 ways. Rourke shines his flashlight down the center passage. The beam barely penetrates 10 feet before it dissolves into black. A metal barrel lies on its side, charred and smoking. Likely a fuel drum ignited earlier by Red's first burst at to the right. Santoro peers through the narrow tunnel, Browning automatic rifle ready. Movement. I think they're falling back toward the inner chambers. Evans nods. Engineers seal that passage. 2 Marines set down demolition charges, wiring them quickly. The left tunnel is wider. Reinforced beams. Fresh air drifting out, that's the main artery. And the Japanese know it. A single shot rings out, followed by a burst from an Arisaka rifle. The bullet cracks past Rourke's ear, embedding into the wall with a sharp ping. Evans ducks. Contact front. Push forward before they regroup. The Marines surge into the left tunnel. Instantly, the temperature rises. They're moving toward a lower chamber, one heated by fires still burning from earlier fuel blasts. Red wipes sweat from his eyes. The weight of his gear doubles in the stifling heat. Rourke keeps close, M1 raised as they round a bend. They see it. A massive cavern opens before them, the scale stunning after the narrow confines of the tunnels. The ceiling rises 40 feet overhead, supported by timber braces and volcanic pillars. Bunk beds line the walls. Ammunition crates are piled chest high. Lanterns flicker dimly, and dozens of Japanese soldiers are inside. Some scramble to form firing lines. Others grab grenades from crates. A few stare in shock, faces pale, mouths open at the sight of American Marines pouring into their underground sanctuary. Red doesn't hesitate. He lifts the nozzle. Evans gives the signal. Red squeezes the trigger. The flamethrower roars to life, a writhing serpent of flame streaking across the cavern. It hits the first rank of defenders, engulfing them instantly. The fire clings, crawling over uniforms, weapons, and wooden supports. Ammunition begins to detonate in sharp, snapping pops. The Japanese counterattack is chaotic and desperate. Grenades roll across the floor. A machine gun opens from a raised ledge. Rourke fires rapidly, taking down a gunner who tries to flank Red. But the cavern is too large for one flamethrower burst, and the Japanese are not retreating, reloading. Red shouts, voice strained. He switches off the ignition, adjusting fuel flow. Evans orders 2 fire teams forward. Suppress that ledge. Keep them pinned. Marines advance under heavy fire, bullets sparking off the rock walls. One man is hit in the thigh and collapses. Another drags him behind a timber post as corpsmen scramble up. A grenade lands near Santoro. Move! Rourke shouts. They die behind a supply crate as the blast sends splinters flying. Dust rains from the ceiling. A beam cracks. The cavern groans. Sir, an engineer shouts. These supports won't hold much longer. Evans assesses the collapsing beams, then eyes Red's flamethrower. Then the stacked ammunition crates. Red, we need that far chamber cleared now. Red nods and rushes forward, Rourke covering him. Gunfire rings out from a low trench dug into the floor. A Japanese soldier rises with a bayonet rifle, screaming. Rourke fires first, dropping him inches from Red's boots. Red braces his stance, flips the safety, and unleashes another torrent of burning fuel. The flame arches across the cavern, igniting bedding, crates, everything. The defenders break, sprinting toward rear tunnels, some firing blindly as they retreat. Then someone screams a warning in Japanese, a single, terrified word, Bakudan. Explosives? Rourke sees it. A stack of mortar shells beginning to glow under the heat. Evans, he shouts. We've got to move. Evans waves his arm. Out of the chamber. Now! The Marines sprint back toward the mouth of the cavern as the temperature spikes behind them. The air shimmers with heat. Fuel canisters rupture with dull thuds. Red turns to follow. A stray bullet hits the ground at his feet, spraying rock shards into his shins. He stumbles. Rourke grabs him. Move, Red. Red limps forward, flames flickering from his nozzle as the tank overheats. They scramble toward the tunnel entrance as the engineers shout. Fires at the crates. 10 seconds. Evans shoves men forward, pushing stragglers out of the cavern. Then, a sound like the mountain inhaling a deep, rumbling roar. Rourke dives behind a stone outcrop and pulls Red under him as boom. The cavern explodes in a cataclysmic blast. Flame jets through side vents. The floor trembles. The air slams into them like a physical force. Timber collapses, choking dust billows through the tunnel. And the shockwave rolls past like a freight train. Silence follows, broken only by pebbles skittering in the wheeze of men struggling to breathe. Rourke lifts his head. Behind them, the massive cavern is gone, collapsed into a smoldering ruin. Red coughs violently, face gray with ash. That was too close. Evans staggers to his feet, looking at the destruction. One chamber down, but Kurabayashi didn't put all his men in one place. Rourke turns his flashlight further down the tunnel. More darkness waits. More chambers. More defenders who still believe they can hold this mountain. And somewhere deep inside, the heart of Suribachi still beats. February 22nd, 1945. Lower levels of the Suribachi Tunnel, Iwo Jima. Dust hangs so thick in the air that each breath tastes like scorched earth. Rourke coughs hard, forcing gritty particles from his throat as he helps Red to his feet. The tunnel behind them glows faintly from the collapsed cavern, embers flickering like dying stars. Evan steps forward, face streaked with ash. Sound off. One by one, Marines answer from the haze. Some limp, some wheeze. Some don't answer at all. A corpseman checks a motionless figure near a cracked pillar, shaking his head slowly. Evans clenches his jaw, but says nothing. There's no time. Not in this place. Not with the mountain trembling like something alive beneath them. A metallic clatter echoes from the darkness ahead. Then another. Bootsteps. Rourke raises his rifle instinctively. Sir, they're regrouping. Evans nods grimly. We hit one of their inner chambers. They'll come for us now. The Japanese soldiers who survived the blast, and those who were entrenched deeper within, are converging. The sound grows louder. Hurried footsteps, shouted commands, weapons rustling. Red steadies the flamethrower wand. Fuel's low, he mutters. Enough for maybe 2 bursts. Make them count. Evans says. The tunnel narrows ahead, funneling sound straight toward them. The Marines spread out along the walls, riflemen kneeling, barmen taking wider angles, engineers squeezing behind collapsed beams. Then the lights go out. The flickering lanterns overhead suddenly shatter. Every glass globe exploding as if struck by invisible hammers. Darkness clamps down over the tunnel like a suffocating shroud. For a split second, no one breathes. Then a shrill cry erupts from the blackness. Banzai! The charge hits them like a tidal wave. Dozens of Japanese soldiers rush from the unseen depths, bayonets fixed, rifles raised, voices blending into a single roar. Some carry satchel charges strapped to their chests. Others wield long spears, hastily carved from shattered supports. Muzzle flashes strobe the tunnel in frozen snapshots, faces twisted with fury, shadows leaping across the walls. Hold the line. Evans shouts. Rourke fires until his rifle's clip ejects with a sharp ping. He slams in another, barely in time to block a bayonet thrust with his forearm. Pain flares up his wrist. He kicks the attacker back and shoots him in the chest. On the left flank, Santoro's bar thunders, cutting down attackers trying to spill around the edges. But for every man that falls, 2 more push in behind him. A satchel charge skids across the floor, the fuse hissing. Grenade. Get out. A Marine dives forward, hurling it into a side fissure just seconds before it detonates. Rock fragments peppering the tunnel like shrapnel. Red tries to get a clear shot, but the melee is too close. Friend and foe tangled together in a violent, heaving mass. Red. Rourke shouts. Back. You need space. Red falls back 2 steps, breath ragged. He braces the wand, thumb trembling over the trigger. A Japanese officer bursts through the smoke, sword raised, face streaked with soot and fury. He charges straight at Red. Rourke fires, but the officer keeps coming. Red steps back, too slow, steel flashes. Evans tackles the officer sideways, the blade scraping sparks off the tunnel wall. Rourke finishes him with 2 quick shots. Red exhales shakily. Oh, you both. No time, Evans snaps. Do it now. Red plants his boot, angles the nozzle, and a sish thump. The flamethrower erupts. A swollen cloud of fire surges outward, illuminating the tunnel in a hellish bloom. Japanese soldiers recoil instantly, screams echoing as burning fuel splashes across their ranks. Flames cling to uniforms. Wooden spear shafts ignite. The charge collapses in chaos. retreating toward the deeper tunnels. But the burst drains the tank fast, too fast. Red slams the trigger again. Nothing but a hollow hiss. He's out. Sir. Red shouts. Tank's dry. Evans grits his teeth. Then drop it. We push forward. But before the order can echo away, the ground shakes violently beneath them. Dust cascades from the ceiling. A deep rumble rolls through the mountain. A low warning growl. Cave in, an engineer yells. They're setting explosives deeper inside. Another tremor rattles the supports. Rourke's heart slams into his chest. The enemy isn't just counterattacking. They're preparing to bury the entire tunnel, Americans and Japanese alike, beneath tons of volcanic rock. Evans turns to his men, voice cold and steady. They want to seal themselves in with us. They want to take the whole damned mountain with them. He points deeper into the black. Then we go toward the charges. If they bring this place down, it won't be while we're standing here waiting. The Marines exchange looks, exhausted, terrified, but resolute. Rourke lifts his rifle. Red picks up a fallen Japanese weapon. Santoro racks his bar. Evans steps to the front of the formation. Move out, he orders. We're going deeper. Behind them, the tunnel cracks ominously. Ahead of them, the enemy prepares one final stand, and between those two forces lies the narrow pulse of life that keeps them pressing forward. One step, one breath, one shot at a time. February 22nd, 1945. Interior caverns, Iwo Jima. The deeper the Marines push, the more the air changes, thickening, warming, tightening like an invisible fist. The smell of sulfur grows sharper. The walls sweat. Every breath feels like inhaling through a wet cloth. Rourke wipes his brow. The back of his glove comes away black with soot. Ahead, engineers pick their way carefully through the fractured tunnel floor, flashlights probing the jagged cracks. Each tremor underfoot feels slightly stronger than the last, as if the mountain is reminding them they're trespassers in its ribs. Evans motions for silence. The men halt instantly. Far ahead, barely audible, is a rhythmic clang, clang, clang. Metal on stone. Purposeful. Repeating. They're setting charges manually. Evans whispers. Closer than we thought. Red shifts the captured Arisaka, a rifle on his shoulder. Sir, if they blow that chamber, this whole level goes. Which, Santoro mutters, would definitely ruin my day. Evans raises a hand for movement. The Marines advance. The tunnel widens abruptly into a natural cavern, ceiling lost somewhere in the black above them. Strange echoes bounce unpredictably around the space. A faint light flickers across the far wall. Evans crouches behind a broken basalt slab, peering over the edge. There, maybe 40 yards away, is a crew of Japanese engineers. Helmets off, sleeves rolled, sweat gleaming on their foreheads. They work feverishly, bracing a row of large, rusted naval shells against the cavern wall. Attaching fuses and wedges to a middle-aged officer oversees the operation. Even from this distance, his uniform is soot-stained, his face streaked with exhaustion. But his eyes burn with something unmistakable, resolve. He isn't preparing an ambush. He's preparing a sacrifice. Evans lowers himself to a crouch. They're not collapsing the tunnel, he says quietly. They're bringing down the entire mountain ridge. Rourke feels a chill that has nothing to do with the heat. How long? He asks. The engineer beside him scans the setup. Minutes if they link the fuses. Maybe less. We need to hit them now, Evans says. The plan spreads through the Marines by glance, not whisper. They stack up behind rocks and broken outcroppings, weapons leveled. Evans signals point 3.2.1. Fire. The cavern explodes with muzzle flashes. Bar rounds chew into the rock. Japanese soldiers dive for cover, but one of the engineers sprints straight for the fuse line. Stop him. Evans shouts. Rourke fires, misses, fires again. The engineer stumbles but keeps crawling, dragging himself toward the fuse with both hands. Red doesn't hesitate. He charges from cover, sprinting across open ground, bullets sparking around him. His boots pound against the stone floor. He throws himself bodily at the fuse assembly, landing hard, knocking the ignition tools aside. The Japanese officer shouts something furious and guttural. .2 riflemen turn their sights on Red. Evans and Santoro fire simultaneously, dropping both. Rourke reaches Red, hauling him back behind a basalt slab. "Are you insane?" Red coughs. "Probably. But worked." The Japanese engineers scramble to reposition the munitions, but their movements are frantic now, half blind in the smoke and confusion. Evans pops up, firing 3 controlled bursts. "Forward," he orders. "Push them off the charges." Marines surge into the cavern, fanning out along the walls, laying down suppressive fire that forces the Japanese to abandon their positions. Some retreat into side tunnels. Others continue fighting, refusing to withdraw even when wounded. The officer stays behind longest, shouting commands, waving his men back, but an engineer grabs his arm, pulling him toward the rear tunnels. He resists, shouting, until another Marine burst cracks over his head and forces him to drop behind the barricade. Within seconds, only 2 Japanese remain near the explosives. They look at each other, nod, and run straight toward the Marines. Suicide charge. Santoro yells. The cavern ignites into chaos. Rourke fires, hits one in the leg, but the man still crawls forward, clutching a grenade. Evans tackles him, wrenching the grenade free and hurling it across the cavern. It detonates harmlessly against a far wall. The second attacker is only feet from Red, until the engineer behind them swings a pry bar like a club, cracking it across the man's temple. The soldier collapses instantly. For a moment, everything goes still. Even the mountain seems to pause. Evans turns toward the remaining explosives. "Clear these shells. Disarm everything you can." The engineers hurry forward. Rourke glances at Red. "You good?" Red nods shakily. "Yeah, but we're not done." He gestures deeper into the cavern. That officer, they pulled him back into the lower tunnels. Evans overhears. "Then that's where we're going next." Another tremor ripples through the stone, stronger this time. Dust falls like dry snow. The mountain isn't finished fighting, and neither are the men inside it. February 22nd, 1945. Lower tunnels beneath Suribachi, Iwo Jima. The engineers work frantically behind the Marines, cutting fuses, prying nose cones from shells, dragging explosives away from load-bearing walls. Every second counts. Every scrape of metal sounds like a lifeline. Evans watches them only long enough to know the immediate danger is contained. Then he gestures for the rifle squad to form up again. They pulled their officer deeper for a reason, he says, voice low. He's their keystone, their planner, their last line of discipline. If he orders another detonation or another countercharge, this whole ridge becomes our grave. Rourke swallows hard. The air down here tastes like burnt metal and old death. His pulse hums in his ears. Red tightens his grip on the captured rifle. "No flamethrower this time," he mutters. "Then we improvise." Evans replies. They proceed into a narrow downward chute carved by hand. Chisels still litter the floor, some snapped in half, others stained dark. The Japanese had dug these additions recently, under relentless bombardment. The deeper they go, the hotter the air becomes. Almost humid, Santoro murmurs behind his teeth. "Feels like we're walking into the Earth's lungs." "Feels like we're walking into its stomach," Red counters. The tunnel bends sharply, opening into a low chamber reinforced with planks. The ceiling drips condensation. Lanterns burn on crude shelves, their flames trembling from the tremors overhead. Evans raises a fist. "Halt." Voices echo from the next chamber. Soft at first, then clearer. Japanese. Evans motions for Rourke to crawl forward. Rourke keeps low, moving behind a broken pillar. The next chamber is larger, almost ceremonial in shape. Built around a natural basalt arch, sandbags line the perimeter. Ammunition crates are stacked against the far wall, along with a radio set smashed beyond use. And in the center, illuminated by a single lantern, sits the officer they saw in the cavern, his uniform jacket removed, his white undershirt soaked in sweat, his face smeared with soot and streaks of dry blood. He is writing calmly. With deliberate strokes, .2 soldiers kneel beside him, heads bowed. A third, barely older than 17, stands guard at the chamber entrance, rifle trembling but ready. Rourke ducks back and whispers the details to Evans. The captain nods slowly. He's preparing a final order or a farewell. Red breathes. We should take the shot now. No, Evans says. We do this clean. Silence the guard first. Then move. He signals the squad into position. Rourke steadies his rifle, lining up the trembling young guard. The boy wipes his forehead with the back of his sleeve, barely keeping his weapon aloft. For a moment, Rourke hesitates. The kid can't be older than his brother back home. Evans leans close, whispering, "If you hesitate, he won't." Rourke exhales. The shot cracks softly. The guard collapses without a sound. In an instant, the Marines flood into the chamber. Hands up. Evans shouts, "Drop it." The two kneeling soldiers lurch to their feet, reaching for pistols, but Santoro and Red bring them down with controlled bursts before they can aim. The officer doesn't flinch. He simply closes the small notebook in front of him and sets it on the floor. Then he rises to his full height, surprisingly tall, and meets Evans' eyes for the first time. The Marines hear him speak. Not in anger, not in panic, but in weary dignity. "You have come far," he says in halting English. Evans keeps his weapon trained on him. "It's over. Surrender." The officer glances around the chamber. The wounded, the dead, the broken tools, the failed explosives. His face tightens with a solemn acceptance. "You misunderstand," he says softly. "It was over before you entered the mountain." He reaches slowly into his waistband. "Stop," Rourke warns, but the officer doesn't draw a weapon. That he pulls out a piece of chalk and turns toward the cavern wall. Santoro frowns. "What the hell?" Evans steps forward carefully. "What are you doing?" The officer presses the chalk to the stone and draws a single vertical line. Then another, then a third. He's marking tunnels. Mapping, showing something. That he steps back, gesturing toward the symbol with an open palm. "You go this path," he says, "where you die here when the next charges go." Evans' eyes narrow. "Why help us?" The officer closes the notebook with 2 fingers and taps it lightly. "For my men," he replies. "For the ones still alive. They will not survive another bombardment. You clear this route," he points to the drawn line, "and you spare them from fire." Rourke's chest tightens. Fire. Flamethrowers. He's not mocking them now. He's bargaining with them. Evans studies the officer, searching for deceit. "There are still booby traps." "Yes," the officer says, "but fewer if you follow this path. I marked the safe stones." Rourke glances at the chalk lines. Some rocks are faintly scratched, invisible unless you knew to look. Evans lowers his rifle half an inch. Not enough to relax. Enough to acknowledge the gesture. "Your choice," the officer says. "We die fighting or die buried." He sinks to his knees, placing his hands behind his head. Red murmurs, "What now, Captain?" Evans looks at his men, exhausted, bleeding, shaken, and then at the chalk map. "We take the path," he says, "and we take him with us." Santoro raises a brow. "A prisoner? Down here." Evans gestures at the ceiling where dust sifts down with every tremor. "Either we move together," he says, "or this mountain decides for all of us." The officer nods once, accepting fate. Evans motions to the squad. "Stack up. Follow the marks." No one touches unmarked stone. Rourke helps Red to his feet. "You ready?" Red exhales. "I've been ready since the first cave. Let's end this." The Marines move toward the dark passage the officer indicated, a narrow slit descending farther into the mountain's core. Behind them, the cavern groans ominously. Ahead of them, the shadows stretch long and uncertain. Point 1 path, point 1 guide, point 1 chance out. February 22nd, 1945. Sublevel tunnels beneath Suribachi. The passage tightens to the width of a single man. The air grows hotter still, dense, stale, almost syrup thick. Every Marine can feel the mountain pressing in from all sides, its weight humming through the basalt like a giant asleep and rolling in its dreams. Evans leads, one hand sweeping the beam of his flashlight low across the floor. The officer walks just behind him, hands bound with a strip of torn webbing. The others form a tight file. Rourke, Red, Santoro, 2 engineers, and the last rifleman covering the rear. Each step echoes strangely. The tunnel walls absorb sound like damp cloth. Only the click of Boots on stone breaks the smothering silence. The Japanese officer lifts his chin toward a cluster of stones ahead. Left. There. Evans shifts his light. Just as the officer said, faint chalk marks cross one stone face in a pattern of diagonal slashes. If these are safe, Evans mutters, what's on the right? Traps. The officer replies simply. Rourke angles his light toward the unmarked branch. The floor looks innocent enough, until he lowers the beam and sees the subtle depression in the dust that a pressure trigger. He shivers. Keep moving. Evans orders. They wind slowly downward around a corkscrewing passage carved by hand and heat. Columns of raw volcanic rock rise like black ribs in the dimness. Somewhere deeper, a steady dripping echoes. Water or condensation or something else. Red whispers, feels like the mountain's alive. Santoro responds, I'd feel better if it wasn't breathing down our necks. Another tremor ripples through the stone, a long, rolling flex that rattles lantern hooks embedded in the wall. The officer pauses. That was close. There are more chambers below, unstable. Meaning? Evans asks. Meaning, the officer says calmly, we walk faster. They reach a fork, one tunnel low and narrow, the other wide but sloping sharply. The officer points to the narrow one without hesitation. Rourke frowns. You sure? The big tunnel looks safer. The officer meets his eyes with grave seriousness. The wide path is mined. The narrow path is only unpleasant. Define unpleasant, Santoro grumbles. Hot. The officer replies. They take the narrow path. Within moments, the temperature climbs and a wave of furnace air envelopes them. Throat drying, skin prickling. Red wipes sweat from his brow, blinking through the sting. What the hell is this? He mutters. Volcanic vent. One of the engineers says. We're walking over an active chamber. Steam hisses through tiny cracks in the stone. The walls drip in rivulets that sizzle faintly where they fall. Rourke feels like he's walking through a giant exhalation of the earth, hot breath pouring from unseen lungs. The tunnel roof dips. Evans has to crouch. Red has to crawl on one knee. The officer navigates with astonishing certainty, even with his hands bound. He tilts his head toward pockets of darkness where the stone looks freshly chipped. Do not touch that ceiling, he warns. Rourke shines his light upward and freezes. Hanging from a ceiling are dozens of thin, soot-blackened cylinders wired together, mortar rounds, wedged into cracks, a hair-triggered deadfall. Evans mouths a silent curse. Everyone down. Move slow. They inch forward back, scraping the warm stone, careful not to brush anything. The ceiling creaks, dust sifts down, not a single pebble skips off a rounded mortar fuse. Everyone stops breathing. Evans waits 0.1 second, 0.4 seconds, 0.8. That nothing happens. He exhales softly. Keep going. The tunnel opens at last into a narrow descent. Cooler air flows upward, faint but real. Rourke whispers, fresh air. That means an exit. The officer shakes his head once. No, not exit. Something else. Red narrows his eyes. Something worse? The officer doesn't answer, because ahead, cut into the floor, is a pit that a perfect circle carved into the basalt, 6 feet across, ringed with handholds and rope anchors. A ladder descends into total blackness, so deep the flashlight beam dissolves before touching bottom. Evans crouches at the lip. What's down there? A bypass tunnel, the officer says. And what's the catch? The officer meets his gaze evenly. There was a collapse days ago. The lower tunnel is damaged. You must cross it quickly. How damaged? Santoro asks. Bridge is gone. Evans straightens slowly. What bridge? A plank of wood, the officer replies. It burned. Rourke rubs his temples. So we're supposed to cross, what? A chasm. The officer nods once. Red forces a grin. Terrific. Evans steps toward the ladder. We go, one at a time. Slowly, he places his boot on the top rung. Then the mountain shakes again. Hard and deep. Monstrous rumble rolls up from the darkness below, as if something enormous has just shifted under the earth. The walls vibrate. The ladder rattles. Pebbles rain down the shaft. The Marines grab whatever rock they can to steady themselves. Red shouts, Captain! Evans braces himself, but keeps his grip. The officer looks up, face suddenly tense. "That was not natural," he says quietly. "That was a charge. A large one." Rourke's blood runs cold. "Did they just—" "Yes," the officer answers. "They collapsed another level. The tunnels behind us are gone." Evans tightens his grip on the ladder. "That means," the officer says with grim finality, "the only path left is down." Evans nods to his men. No turning back now. He descends into the darkness point one by one. The Marines follow, toward a collapsed tunnel, a missing bridge, and whatever waits inside the mountain's deepest shadows. February 22nd, 1945. The lower chasm, beneath Mount Suribachi. The ladder sways slightly under Evans' weight, the steel rungs slick with sweat and dust. Below, the darkness seems to pull at their legs, swallowing the flashlight beams in seconds. The smell here is acrid, smoke, sulfur, and a lingering tang of burned explosives. Each inhale burns Rourke's throat. Red goes next, gripping the side rails like a man climbing through molten stone. His rifle dangles at his side, hooked to his webbing. Santoro follows, bars slung low, every step measured. The two engineers and the officer come last, their faces pale but determined to the bottom. The pit opens into a narrow stone ledge, barely wide enough for two men to walk side by side. Water drips from cracks above, forming shallow pools that reflect the flickering flashlight beams. The walls here seem alive, pulsating with the vibrations of the mountain as if it senses every movement. Evans signals forward. They move in single file, stepping carefully along the ledge. Each footfall echoes unnaturally, a harsh reminder that a misstep could send someone tumbling into an unknown abyss. Suddenly, a metallic snap echoes from above. The Marines freeze. Red whispers, "That's not good." Rourke peers upward, heart in his throat. One of the anchor points from the ladder has shifted. The rope frays slightly. Evans crouches low. "Keep moving. One at a time. Watch the anchor points." As they continue, the tunnel narrows further. Now it's barely shoulder width. The mountain's pulse grows louder, a low, ominous hum that vibrates through their boots and teeth. Then, just ahead, the beam catches a figure. A Japanese soldier emerges from the shadows, motionless, weapon at the ready, a desperate sentinel waiting for intruders. Evans signals silently. Rourke and Santoro raise their weapons. The soldier hesitates, then lunges. Rourke fires first, a single shot striking true. The man collapses into the shallow pool of water, barely a ripple disturbing the surface. Red shoves past, muttering, no time for hesitation. The officer grimaces, shaking his head. Still more below. Deeper. Dangerous. Evans nods. "Then we go. Stay alert. Watch every step." The path twists downward, the ceiling so low that men must crouch fully. The floor is uneven, jagged volcanic rock biting at their boots. Dust and grit fill the air with each hurried breath. Suddenly, the tunnel opens again into a collapsed chamber. Rubble from the previous detonations blocks the way, sharp stones and broken timbers forming a chaotic barricade. Santoro swears under his breath. Figures. Nothing's ever easy. The officer steps forward, tracing the chalk marks carefully over the debris. This is the test. The next chamber is where most of my men fell. Only the marked stones are safe. Rourke glances down and sees faint chalk lines on the rubble, barely visible but precise. One wrong step and a pressure-activated charge could detonate instantly. Evans exhales. "Watch it. One at a time. Move slow." Red mutters. "You said that already. Just checking if we remember." The first man moves, testing each stone carefully. The team follows, inch by inch, hearts pounding. Every scrape of rock against boot echoes like a gunshot in the cavern. Dust rises around them, blurring vision and choking lungs. Suddenly, a tremor at a deep, rolling crack reverberates through the floor. Loose stones tumble down the chasm they just crossed. Rourke freezes mid-step. Behind him, Santoro grips the ledge, sweat dripping into his eyes. Evans growls, "Keep moving." Step by step, they cross the treacherous debris. Behind them, A faint rumble suggests another detonation further up, the mountain attempting to bury its secrets again. Finally, they reach the other side. The air cools slightly. The officer exhales for the first time since the descent, nodding toward the tunnel that continues downward. Evans glances at his men. We're still not out, but we're past the first gauntlet. Rourke wipes soot from his eyes. You're kidding me, right? Evans shakes his head. Nope, just the mountain reminding us why it's called hell. The team presses forward, deeper into Suribachi, toward the heart of the tunnels where the remaining Japanese defenders and whatever final traps lie in wait will decide whether the Marines make it out alive. February 22nd, 1945. Central Cavern, Mount Suribachi. The air grows stiller as the Marines descend, heavy and thick like molten stone. Each footstep echoes in the narrow passageways, bouncing off walls jagged with volcanic rock and debris. The faint chalk marks lead them through a labyrinth of tunnels, each one more oppressive than the last. The mountain feels alive, breathing heat, warning them, threatening collapse. Evans signals the squad to halt. A faint metallic tink reaches their ears, far off but unmistakable. Rourke squints, aiming his flashlight into the gloom. Figures move in the shadows. Japanese soldiers, their faces painted in soot, their eyes wide and frantic. They're holding makeshift weapons, steel rods, pistols, grenades. Red whispers, looks like a welcome party. Evans clenches his jaw. No smiles this time. The enemy bursts from cover in a coordinated rush. The Marines react instantly. Santoro's bar roars, hammering a rhythm of steel into shadows. Rourke fires controlled bursts, sending attackers sprawling into corners. Red and Evans advance side by side, cutting down anyone attempting to flank them. The cavern erupts in chaos. Smoke, sparks, screams. Dust rises, choking and blinding. Every rock seems to have a memory of violence, echoing each shot and scream. Through it all, the Japanese officer who had guided them stays remarkably calm, crouched beside Evans. He gestures toward a side passage. Quickly. Safe path. He hisses. They retreat in formation, keeping low and moving fast along the chalk-marked route. Behind them, the enemy falters, too scattered and panicked to mount a coordinated attack. Rourke glances back, catching a glimpse of a soldier raising a grenade. Time slows. He fires, a sharp crack, and the man collapses, the grenade skittering harmlessly across jagged stone. Red exhales. Too close. Evans wipes grime from his face. Not close enough, he mutters. Keep moving. The tunnel narrows again, forcing the Marines into a single file. The officer leads, moving with uncanny precision. Each turn, each twist, reveals a new chamber of devastation. Old barricades, scorched walls, collapsed ceilings, evidence of previous fighting and explosives rigged in preparation for suicide charges. Suddenly, the ground trembles violently. A roar fills the tunnel, deafening, like the mountain itself is tearing apart. Debris falls from the ceiling. Dust fills the air. Rourke grabs the officer's sleeve. What now? The officer shakes his head. We must run. Forward. No hesitation. Evans signals the Marines. Move. Now. Every second counts. They sprint along the chalk-marked path, boots slipping in shallow pools of water, rocks crumbling beneath them. Smoke and dust obscure vision. The enemy has been partially scattered, but their presence is still felt in muffled footsteps and distant shouts. Red trips over a jagged stone but regains balance. This mountain hates us, he mutters. No. Evans replies, voice grim. It just wants to kill us. The Marines press onward, deeper into Suribachi, following the officer and the chalk marks. Every step is a negotiation with death, every breath a reminder that survival is fragile. Finally, they reach a large natural cavern, the heart of the mountain. Here, the air is slightly cooler, and a faint shaft of daylight filters through cracks above. Dozens of Japanese soldiers remain, cornered and desperate. Weapons are raised, but morale is faltering. Many are wounded, others fatigued beyond endurance. Evans signals for a halt. He whispers, "We push carefully. Take them alive if possible, but be ready." The Marines advance, methodical, each shot calculated. Red lifts the captured Arasaka, firing only when necessary. Santoro's bar mows down the few attempting to charge. Rourke covers flanks. Evans coordinates the advance. The remaining soldiers surrender, exhausted and broken. The officer nods to Evans. "The mountain is cleared," he says quietly. Evans lets out a long breath. "For now," he replies. The cavern is eerily silent, save for the distant rumble of the mountain settling and the labored breathing of men on both sides. Red mutters, "I don't know if I'm happy or dead inside." Evans smirks faintly. "Both, probably. Let's secure this place before it decides to collapse again." The Marines begin methodically checking for booby traps, defusing explosives, and securing prisoners. For the first time in hours, they can lower their weapons slightly. Dust settles around them, and the oppressive heat begins to ebb. Outside, the first hints of the Iwo Jima sunset glow faintly through cracks far above, painting the stone in gold and orange. The mountain has not been defeated. It is still dangerous, still unforgiving, but the Marines have carved a path through its heart, surviving ambush, fire, and collapse. Evans looks around at his squad. "We live to see another day, because we moved smart, because we trusted the path, and because we didn't let fear stop us." Red exhales, shaking his head, and because the flamethrower never lost its bite. The officer steps forward, hands still bound, and offers a small, solemn bow. Even in defeat, there is respect in his gaze. Evans nods. "Let's get out of this hellhole, one step at a time." The Marines gather their gear, help their wounded, and begin the long ascent back toward the surface. Behind them, the tunnels grow silent once more, the echoes of battle fading. But the mountain will remember, and the memory of fire, courage, and survival will echo far beyond its volcanic walls. February 22nd, 1945. Surface of Mount Suribachi, Iwo Jima. The climb toward daylight is slow. Every step up jagged volcanic rock tests exhausted legs. Smoke and dust cling to clothes, mixing with the sweat of hours underground. The Marines move cautiously, carrying the prisoners and guiding the Japanese officer who had led them safely through the tunnels. Above, the sky is streaked in the dying colors of the Pacific sunset. Faint orange and violet illuminate the cratered landscape, the jagged ridges, and the distant smoke from artillery still falling across the island. For a brief moment, the horrors of the tunnels fade beneath the vast expanse of sky. Evans stops, surveying the island below. The blackened scars of battle, burned bunkers, shattered pillboxes, and cratered sands stretch to the horizon. The Pacific beyond glows silver in the last light. Rourke exhales, his chest tight. "We actually made it." Red wipes dirt and soot from his face. "Barely," Santoro mutters under his breath. "I never want to see another tunnel again." Evans allows himself a thin smile. "Neither do I, but we finished the job." The Japanese officer who had guided them looks around, then at Evans. His voice is quiet, but steady. "Your men are fortunate. Many would not survive this mountain. Even my soldiers would have died if you had not followed the marked path." Evans nods. "You helped us survive. That counts for something." The officer bows his head slightly. "It does. For your men, and for mine." Behind them, the Marines secure the area, setting up a temporary perimeter. The tunnels below are now quiet, cleared of combatants and explosives. The mountain, though still dangerous, is no longer an immediate death trap. Red gazes at the horizon, voice low. "I thought I understood war, but this is something else." Evans lays a hand on his shoulder. "War teaches in ways you don't expect. Today, we learn that courage, planning, and a little help from those you'd least expect can get you through hell." The prisoners are led toward a makeshift holding area under the watchful eyes of the Marines. The Japanese officer lingers, looking back toward the mountain's mouth. A flicker of pride, of survival, crosses his face. Rourke breaks the silence. "Captain, what now?" Evans looks toward the setting sun. then down at the island littered with smoke, ash, and the distant sounds of battle. Now we move forward. There's still fighting to be done, but for tonight, we've proven we can survive the mountain's heart. And sometimes that's enough. The squad gathers together, faces smudged with dirt, sweat, and soot. Their weapons are ready, but the tension eases slightly. For the first time since entering the tunnels, they feel the cool evening air brushing against their skin. Above them, the last light of day fades, casting long shadows over the volcanic landscape. Somewhere in the distance, faintly, the Pacific waves crash endlessly against blackened shores. And for the Marines emerging from Suribachi's bowels, the battle is far from over. But for now, the mountain has been conquered. Evans exhales, voice soft but firm. Let's get these men out. Tomorrow, we fight again. But tonight, we survived. Red grins faintly. And we still have our flamethrowers. A short, dry laugh ripples through the squad. The mountain remains silent behind them, as if acknowledging the passage of those who dared enter its heart. The Marines continue toward their extraction point, their shadows long in the moonlight, carrying the weight of survival and the scars of battle, but also the hard-won respect for the mountain, the enemy, and each other. February 23rd, 1945. Iwo Jima, base perimeter. The first stars appear overhead, winking cold and distant as the Marines reach the temporary perimeter at the foot of Suribachi. Exhaustion has replaced adrenaline. Muscles ache, lungs burn, and sweat has crusted into salt on faces and uniforms. Evans gathers his squad in a huddle, surveying their numbers. None are missing. None are critically injured beyond field care. They made it through the mountain's veins alive. Red lets out a long sigh, adjusting the sling of his captured Arasaka. I can't believe we made it. Every step felt like the last. Rourke rubs his neck, voice hoarse. I don't want to see tunnels for the rest of my life. Santoro, smirking despite the grime and fatigue, adds, You mean until tomorrow morning when we have to climb another ridge and clear another bunker? Evans shakes his head, but the faint curve of a smile tugs at the corner of his lips. Not yet. Tonight, we rest. Tomorrow, the mountain still stands, but at least we've taken its heart. Nearby, medics begin tending to wounded Japanese soldiers, including the officer who had guided them through the tunnels. He sits quietly on a cot, hands bound but shoulders relaxed. For the first time, he allows himself a breath of relief that a young Marine approaches Evans. Sir, they called it a miracle. How they survived those tunnels. Evans looks at the chalk marks, at the officer's calm, measured gestures, and at the exhausted but still standing Marines. Sometimes it's not a miracle, he says slowly. It's preparation, guidance, and trust. Trust that you'll follow the path, even when every instinct tells you to panic. The officer, listening quietly, nods faintly. He gestures toward the squad and says in broken English, You and your men brave. Smart. Alive. Evans inclines his head. We all have our reasons to survive. You saved lives today, both yours and ours. The night is quiet but tense. Gunfire is distant. Artillery rumbles faintly, and the Pacific waves crash against blackened shores beyond the beachhead. The cratered landscape of Iwo Jima glows under the moonlight, casting long, shifting shadows over broken bunkers, bombed-out trenches, and the jagged flank of Suribachi. Evans looks at his squad, all silent, all staring toward the mountain. We've learned something important down there, he says. The mountain can't kill determination. It can't kill courage, but can test both. And tonight, we passed the test. Red lets out a low chuckle, yet just barely. Rourke leans against a crate, closing his eyes. Barely is better than never. Santoro glances at the officer. And your men? The officer shrugs, faintly smiling. Those who survived will rebuild. The mountain takes many, but not all. You showed mercy. That is worth remembering. Evans nods, and we'll remember it. But now we rest. Around the perimeter, small fires flicker, casting long shadows across the ground. The Marines sit in silence, staring at the night sky. Each man is lost in his own thoughts. Families, home, what survived and what didn't. Above them, The black bulk of Mount Suribachi looms silently, its tunnels empty for now, its secrets intact, but no longer a trap. The mountain has tested them, challenged them, and almost claimed them, but in the end, survival, courage, and careful strategy prevailed. The officer watches the Marines from his cot, realizing that even in defeat, he has ensured the survival of many of his men. The night is still, and the wind carries a faint echo of battle, distant but persistent, a reminder that the island is not done testing anyone. Evans rises, voice low but carrying over the quiet camp. Tomorrow, we fight again. But tonight, we remember that even in the heart of Suribachi, we survived. A hush falls over the group, and as the moon climbs higher, casting pale light across blackened rock and battered men, the island holds its breath, silent witnesses to the courage that refused to yield, to the fire that cleared the caves, and to the human spirit that emerges from even the deepest darkness. February 24th, 1945. Iwo Jima, Forward Command Post. Dawn arrives with a brittle chill that cuts through the soot and grime on the Marines' faces. The first rays of sunlight spill over Suribachi, illuminating the cratered slopes, the smoldering bunkers, and the scarred black sand beaches. For the men who emerge from the mountain's bowels, the sight of light feels almost unreal after hours spent in suffocating darkness. Evans surveys his squad as they gather their gear. Faces are streaked with sweat, dirt, and soot, but eyes carry a mix of exhaustion, relief, and hardened resolve. Red rubs his hands together, trying to get the stiffness out, muttering, "I don't think I've ever been happier to see daylight." Rourke shakes his head, glancing at the distant peaks. "I didn't know a mountain could hate us this much." Santoro smirks despite the fatigue. "It's alive, that's what it is." And it almost won. Evans turns his attention to the Japanese officer who had guided them through the tunnels. The man stands quietly, surveying the emerging chaos of battle around the base perimeter. Despite his captured status, there's a calm dignity to him. "You've done well," Evans says, voice low. "Your men, many will live because of you." The officer bows slightly. "And your men, they are brave. Fire and courage together. You cleared the heart of Suribachi." Rourke glances at Evans. "Fire? You mean the flamethrowers?" Evans allows a faint smile. "Yes, the flame did its part. But strategy, observation, and the marks on the stones, that's what really saved lives. The flamethrower just made sure nothing stayed hidden." Red shakes his head. "Still can't get over it. All those tunnels, all that heat, the smell, the screaming." Evans puts a hand on his shoulder. "We survived because we stayed focused, because we watched our step, because we trusted the path. And yes, the flamethrower cleared more than just caves. It cleared doubt." The officer steps forward, gesturing toward the island. "Suribachi will remember this day. Your courage, your fire, the lives spared. Even the mountain respects that." Evans nods, surveying the horizon. The distant rumble of artillery continues, a reminder that the battle is far from over. But for the men who had entered the mountain's tunnels, fought through darkness, and emerged alive, there's a rare moment of quiet pride. Red mutters, "You know, I never thought I'd say this, but I respect that mountain, even if it tried to kill us every step of the way." Rourke laughs dryly. "Respect is a funny thing when your legs feel like they'll fall off." Evans takes a deep breath, letting the morning sun warm his face. "We'll fight again. But today we survived one of the deadliest traps on this island. We've earned that. Remember it." The officer nods once more, acknowledging the truth of Evans' words. Around them, the base begins to stir. Soldiers moving supplies, medics treating wounded, and engineers inspecting cleared tunnels. Suribachi stands behind them, silent but defiant, a monument to both the horrors and the triumphs that occurred within its volcanic heart. As the Marines prepare to move out, Evans casts a final glance at the tunnels they emerged from. "The mountain tested us," he says softly, "but we proved we can survive its heart." Red grins faintly. "And we still have our flamethrowers." Evans allows himself a small smile. "And that fire, it's more than just flames. It's courage you carry with you. That more than anything, clears the darkness. Above them, the sun rises fully over Iwo Jima, bathing the battlefield in light. The mountain silhouette is jagged, imposing, eternal. But for the Marines who survived its tunnels, the shadow it casts is no longer just fear. It is a testament to perseverance, strategy, and the unforgiving, cleansing power of fire. February 25th, 1945. Iwo Jima, temporary rest area. The Marines sit in clusters around small fires, drying soaked uniforms, patching minor wounds, and sharing ration meals. Silence stretches over them, punctuated by the distant crack of artillery and the faint hum of the Pacific surf beyond the beachhead. Each man is lost in thought, replaying the hours spent beneath Suribachi, the tunnels, the darkness, the heat, the fear, and the calculated survival that carried them out alive. Evan sits slightly apart, observing his squad. Each face tells a story of what they endured. Rourke's wide, tired eyes, Red's quiet shaking hands, Santoro's subtle smirk that masks fatigue. He allows himself a moment to reflect, not on victory, but on survival, on lessons learned in the bowels of the mountain. The flamethrower, he murmurs to himself, wasn't just a weapon. It was a reckoning. Red overhears him and chuckles dryly. Yeah, that flame. The Japanese laughed at it at first, didn't they? Evans nods. Until it cleared their caves. Until it cleared the path for us. Fire has a way of forcing the truth out, forcing hesitation to end and courage to rise. The Japanese officer, seated nearby under the watch of medics, listens silently. He has seen this truth too, the devastating combination of human will and firepower. Though enemies, he respects the men who survived his mountain. You learned something, Evans says, addressing the officer indirectly, his voice carrying to the young Japanese soldiers being processed nearby. Even in the tightest darkness, the smallest spark can make a difference. Strategy, observation, discipline, courage. That flame, it reveals who survives. Red pokes at the small fire with a stick. Reveals, yeah, and burns too. Evans allows a faint smile. Sometimes that's what it takes. Around them, the camp slowly comes to life. Engineers return with supplies. Medics move from man to man, and the distant sounds of battle continue. But the immediate terror of Suribachi's tunnels has been survived. The mountain remains a looming, silent presence, but its heart has been tested, and the Marines emerged alive. Rourke, staring at the distant silhouette of the volcano, whispers, "I'll never forget those tunnels or the fire that cleared them." Evans places a firm hand on his shoulder. "Nor will I." And the lesson carries forward. Courage, preparation, and the willingness to step into the fire. That's what survival demands. The officer, understanding the words without needing translation, nods slightly. His men, those who survived, glance at the Marines with newfound respect. Even in defeat, there is acknowledgement. Fire, strategy, and determination can overcome darkness, despair, and death. As night falls over Iwo Jima. The mountain looms larger than ever, yet the Marines have proved they can navigate its heart. They have survived the tunnels, defused the explosives, captured the enemy, and endured the heat and smoke of the flamethrowers' purifying fire. In the quiet, Evan stands and looks once more towards Suribachi. "The mountain may rise again," he says softly, "but so will we. And next time, we'll carry that flame into every shadow it hides." Red mutters from the fire, "And I'll carry it in my boots for the rest of my life." The squad laughs quietly, the first genuine laughter since the descent. The officer smiles faintly, recognizing the bond forged in shared survival. Above, the stars begin to glimmer over Iwo Jima, and the Pacific waves crash endlessly against blackened shores. The mountain remains, silent and eternal, but beneath its surface, the heart has been cleared. Fire has revealed courage, and courage has survived the flames. The Marines sit in the quiet night, each man absorbing the weight of what they endured. The lessons of Suribachi will travel with them forever, in strategy, in vigilance, in courage, and in the fire that clears the darkness.